Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on something that happens thousands, maybe even millions of times a day at the world's biggest companies, how they actually buy stuff. And we're going to use SAP, the system that pretty much powers global business, as our guide.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. How does a giant company buy something? I mean, it can't be as simple as adding 1,000 engine parts to an online shopping cart and clicking checkout, can it?
That is the perfect question to start with. And no, you're absolutely right. It's not a simple click and buy. There's a whole structured process behind it, and it's all designed for control and efficiency. So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to start with a simple analogy, then we'll walk through creating an order, getting it delivered, and paying for it. After that, we'll peek behind the curtain at the company's blueprint inside SAP, and we'll even touch on a few special cases you might run into.
To really get our heads around this big corporate buying process, which, by the way, is called procurement, I want you to just think about a simple shopping trip. Seriously, the basic logic is almost identical whether you're buying a carton of milk or 1,000 microchips. Now, in the business world, this whole journey has an official name, the procure-to-pay cycle. I know, that diagram looks a little intense with all the boxes and arrows, but trust me, every single one of these steps has a direct parallel to our simple shopping trip, and we're going to walk through them one by one. All right, so let's start at the very beginning. Before any company can buy a single thing, someone somewhere has to realize they need something. This first phase is all about taking that need and turning it into a real official order. This is step 1, determination of requirements. Just think about your house. Someone opens the fridge, sees the milk is almost gone, and what do? They add it to the shopping list on the door. It's just a simple internal note that says, hey, we need to get this. In SAP, that shopping list is called a purchase requisition. It's a formal but still internal request. So an engineer on the factory floor might create one for a specific part, or an office manager might create one for new chairs. So wait, it's not a commitment to buy yet. It's just an official way of saying we need this inside the company's walls?
Exactly. You hit the crucial point. It's just the very start of the process.
Okay, so you've got milk written on your list. What's next? Well, you have to decide where you're going to buy it. Are you going to the little corner store, the big supermarket? Maybe you check the prices at a few places. You're deciding on your supplier. And in business, this gets a little more formal. This step is called source determination. The purchasing department's job is to find the best vendor. Now, for something really expensive or complex, they might send out what's called a request for quotation, or an RFQ, to a bunch of different suppliers. They're basically asking, hey, what's your best price and when can you get it here? It's really just the corporate version of comparison shopping. Okay, that brings up a question for me. I get that the shopping list is the purchase requisition, but what's the real difference between that internal wish list and the actual order I'd place online? That is a fantastic question, and it is probably the most important distinction in this entire process. They feel similar, but they do completely different jobs. Let's break it down. Like we said, the purchase requisition is purely internal. It's the wish list. It never, ever gets sent to a supplier. But the purchase order, that's the real deal. It's an external, legally binding contract that you send to the supplier. It says, we officially commit to buying these items at this price, delivered by this date. That's the moment the purchase is actually made. So we've created the order, it's been approved, and we've sent it off to our supplier. A few days go by, and then a truck pulls up to our warehouse, which brings us to the next critical step. You know how it is when you get a package at home, right? You look at the label, make sure it's for you, maybe check if the box is crushed, and confirm it looks like what you were expecting. Well, in a big company, that same simple idea becomes a formal, really important step in the system. This is called the goods receipt. When the materials actually arrive at the loading dock, someone in the warehouse documents that arrival in SAP. They check the items against the original purchase order to make sure the products are right and the quantities are correct.
So this is the trust but verify step. They're making sure what they got is exactly what they asked for.
Precisely. And this step updates the entire system, letting everyone know the inventory is now officially in-house. So the goods are here, they're correct, we're almost at the finish line. Now all we have to do is handle the money side of things. And this is where the accounting department really steps in. Sooner or later, the supplier is going to send a bill, which is called an invoice. In SAP, the next step is called Invoice Verification. The system performs what's famously known as a three-way match. It asks 3 questions. Does the invoice from the supplier match the purchase order in terms of price? Does it match the goods receipt in terms of quantity?
If everything lines up, check, 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 the invoice is approved for payment. And that brings us to the final step, payment processing. Once that invoice is verified, the accounting department schedules the payment to the supplier. And that's it. The loop is closed. We figured out we needed something, we ordered it, we received it, we checked the bill, and we paid for it.
Okay, the step-by-step process makes sense, but with all these requisitions and orders and receipts flying around, how does SAP know which factory or which part of the company is doing the buying? That's the next key piece of the puzzle. It all happens inside a very specific organizational structure, almost like a digital blueprint of the company inside SAP.
It all happens within something called the enterprise structure. The easiest way to picture it is like a set of those Russian nesting dolls. At the very top, the biggest doll, is the client. That's the entire corporate group. Inside that, you have company codes, which are the separate legal companies. And each of those companies has one or more plants. Think a factory or a distribution center. And even inside a plant, you have specific storage locations, like a certain aisle or specific bin in the warehouse.
And right at the heart of all this buying activity is the purchasing organization. This is the department, the unit, that actually handles the procurement. They're the ones negotiating with vendors. A company can set it up to have one for each plant, or they can have one central purchasing org that buys for everybody to get better deals.
So now that we've got the standard A to Z process down, it's worth knowing that SAP is super flexible and can handle all sorts of complex real-world situations. Let's just quickly touch on a few of them. For instance, a stock transfer isn't a purchase from an outside company at all. It's an internal order to move your own materials from, say, your Texas factory to your Ohio factory. Then there's subcontracting, where you actually send your own parts to a vendor so they can assemble a final product for you. And a really cool one is supplier consignment, where a vendor's parts physically sit in your warehouse, but you don't actually own them or pay for them until the exact moment you pull them off the shelf to use them. So if we boil it all down, this is really the key takeaway. All these documents, all these structures, they aren't there just to make things complicated. They're there to make the entire process crystal clear and completely traceable. Exactly. From that first, we need milk moment to the final payment leaving the bank account. Every single step is documented, so a company always knows what it needed, who it bought from, what it received, and what it paid. And that really leads to our final thought for you today. These principles we've been talking about, clarity, approvals, verification, they can be applied almost anywhere. So think about the projects you're working on, or even just your daily tasks. Where could a more structured, step-by-step approach like this create more clarity and less confusion? It's a great way to think about it. Thank you so much for breaking all of this down. You're very welcome.